In a world filled with uncertainty, where fear often lurks in the shadows and danger seems to grow closer every day, there exists a passage ancient, powerful, and deeply comforting. Psalm 91, a sacred promise whispered through generations. It is known by many as the most powerful prayer of protection. Imagine standing in the midst of chaos, storms raging, news filled with tragedy, hearts weighed down by anxiety, and finding a hidden place of peace. Psalm 91 calls this the secret place of the Most High. It is not a physical location, but a spiritual dwelling, a fortress of divine safety where no evil can reach and no fear can stay. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. These opening words are more than poetry. They are an invitation, an open door for anyone seeking refuge, guidance, and strength when the world becomes too heavy to bear. In this sacred space, faith becomes a shield, and trust becomes a weapon stronger than fear itself. For countless believers across centuries, this psalm has been more than scripture, it has been a lifeline. Soldiers carried it into battle, mothers whispered it over sleeping children, and those facing sickness or loss found comfort in its promises. It has stood as a timeless reminder that divine protection is not a myth, it is a living reality for those who believe. When we say that God is our fortress, it is not just a metaphor. A fortress is a stronghold, a place built to withstand attack. In the same way, faith builds invisible walls around our hearts, shielding us from despair, doubt, and darkness. And when we rest in the shadow of the Almighty, we are reminded that even when we cannot see Him, His presence is near, covering us like a protective wing. As we begin this journey through Psalm 91, we will uncover its hidden meanings, beline, and see how its divine message still speaks directly to the fears of our modern age. Whether you are battling inner storms, seeking peace in uncertain times, or simply searching for a deeper understanding of God's protection, this message is for you. Before we dive deeper, if this message speaks to your heart, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Together, we will rediscover why Psalm 91 remains one of the most powerful declarations of faith and protection ever written, and how its promises can transform your life. Right now, wherever you are, as we step further into the depth of Psalm 91, we begin to realize that its promises are not merely comforting words meant to soothe the anxious mind, but a profound declaration of divine deliverance that reaches into the very heart of human vulnerability, addressing dangers both seen and unseen, those that strike suddenly and those that creep silently into our lives. The psalm does not pretend that the world is free of peril. Rather, it acknowledges the reality of deadly threats, spiritual traps, and the terrors that stalk the night, insisting that even amidst these dangers, there exists a source of protection so intimate and powerful that it cannot be shaken. Consider the imagery of snares and arrows, which at first glance may seem like metaphors drawn from ancient warfare, yet they carry a timeless resonance, illustrating the subtle and sometimes invisible threats that we face daily. Life itself can feel like a battlefield. The pressures of work, the fragility of health, the unpredictability of relationships, and the uncertainties that surround global events all converge in ways that leave the heart restless and the mind wary. Yet Psalm 91 speaks directly into this reality, assuring that while traps may be laid and arrows may fly, there is a presence, a force greater than the chaos around us, that surrounds and defends those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High. This divine protection is neither passive nor distant. It is active, intentional, and tailored to the needs of each believer. The psalm conveys a remarkable paradox. The very threats that seem designed to destroy us are rendered powerless in the presence of God's watchful care. It is a promise that does not eliminate danger, but transforms the believer's relationship to it, offering a steadfastness of spirit that no outward circumstance can undo. the pestilence that walks in darkness, the destruction that lays waste at noonday. These are not erased from reality. Yet they no longer have the final word over those who abide under God's shadow. Instead, there is a sovereignty at work that anticipates every danger and orchestrates deliverance in ways that may remain hidden to the human eye yet are unmistakably real. To illustrate, imagine the quiet struggles that so often go unnoticed. A parent walking through the tension of a child's illness, a worker navigating the instability of a fragile economy, or an individual facing the creeping weight of depression and anxiety. All of these situations, though vastly different in form, share a common thread of vulnerability and exposure to unseen forces that threaten peace. Psalm 91 reaches into these exact circumstances, offering assurance that even in the midst of unseen snares or silent, creeping dangers, protection is present, woven into the fabric of daily existence through the nearness of God. The text invites believers to shift their perspective, to recognize that divine guardianship is not always about preventing difficulties, but about standing alongside them, ensuring that the soul remains unbroken while the storms of life rage around. The psalm's imagery extends beyond mere survival into a portrait of relational intimacy with God. When it speaks of feathers and wings, there is an unmistakable tenderness that contrasts the harshness of snares and arrows. The protection promised is not only about defense but also about care, illustrating a duality in divine engagement. God is both warrior and comforter, strength and gentleness, shelter and shield. To dwell in this place is to enter a rhythm of trust, a posture of surrender, and a recognition that safety is found not in avoidance but in proximity, not in control but in faithful presence. This duality reflects the reality of spiritual life, where threats exist, but so does a power that continually upholds and sustains. Real-life experiences echo this dynamic vividly. Across cultures and generations, countless individuals testify to moments when they should have faltered yet found themselves preserved, instances where disaster seemed imminent yet mercy intervened subtly, imperceptibly, and perfectly timed. These narratives align with the psalm's assurance that deliverance is not always dramatic or public. It often comes quietly, through unseen hands and interventions that prevent harm without fanfare. It is in these moments, when danger is met but not endured alone, that the believer comes to understand the profound reality behind the psalm's words, that God's protection is both personal and pervasive, encompassing every aspect of life's battles, whether obvious or hidden. Moreover, the psalm challenges its audience to engage actively with this promise. Protection is not a passive inheritance but a relational dynamic. Those who dwell in the secret place are invited to trust, to abide, and to align their hearts with the source of deliverance. In doing, they do not merely escape peril, they cultivate an inner fortitude that transforms fear into confidence, uncertainty into assurance, and vulnerability into resilience. The threats that surround them remain real, but their response is empowered by the presence of a higher power, whose reach extends beyond the immediate and tangible, embracing even the most hidden corners of their lives. Through this lens, Psalm 91 emerges not as a mere scriptural passage, but as a living framework for understanding protection, perseverance, and the interplay between human vulnerability and divine guardianship. It is an invitation to enter a space where danger is acknowledged yet never allowed to dictate the course of the soul, where unseen forces may still exist, but are rendered harmless in the embrace of a presence that is both intimate and mighty. It is this vision that transforms the psalm from comforting text into an enduring guide for navigating life's trials, offering a template for both spiritual endurance and practical reassurance in moments when the world seems most threatening and fear appears most justified. In essence, the psalm reminds us that deliverance is not abstract. It is experiential. It is felt in the quiet peace that persists amid chaos, in the resilience that emerges when adversity strikes, and in the intimate awareness that one is never truly alone, even when the snares of life seem closest. This dynamic interplay between threat and protection, fear and faith, danger and deliverance, is what gives Psalm 91 its enduring power, a power that continues to resonate because it addresses the very real, very human longing for safety, security, and the assurance that no matter the challenges we face, a divine presence stands vigilant, ready to shield, uphold, and sustain those who choose to dwell close. As we continue to delve into the profound assurances of Psalm 91, we encounter one of its most remarkable and often overlooked dimensions: the active deployment of heavenly beings to safeguard those who dwell in God's presence. The psalm does not merely describe divine protection as a passive shield. Rather, it portrays a dynamic, living defense in which God commands His angels to intervene in the lives of the faithful, orchestrating events and circumstances in ways that are invisible yet profoundly effective. This imagery conveys more than poetic reassurance. It presents a vision of a spiritual reality in which divine oversight is meticulous, intentional, and intimately involved in the affairs of those who trust in God, extending protection to every aspect of life, both monumental and seemingly trivial. Consider the scene painted by the psalmist: angels bearing individuals in their hands to prevent even the smallest stumble. A detail that at first glance may seem symbolic, but carries immense theological weight. This is not a distant, abstract oversight. It is a meticulous guardianship that attends to the minutiae of life. The unseen protection is there in moments of near accidents that pass unnoticed, in choices made under pressure that could have led to harm, and in the silent interventions that redirect danger before it manifests. It suggests that the divine presence works not only in the grand, miraculous rescues we notice, but also in subtle, almost imperceptible ways that cumulatively preserve life, health, and spiritual well-being. To make this more tangible, imagine a mother walking her child to school, unaware that a distracted driver has drifted into her lane. In that fleeting moment, the life of her child could have been placed in jeopardy. Yet the child arrives safely. The mother attributes it to chance, and life continues. According to the vision of Psalm 91, these near misses are far from coincidence. They are examples of divine coverage, where angels, acting under God's command, intervene to protect the faithful in ways that are invisible yet vital. This understanding reshapes the way we perceive everyday experiences, suggesting that the ordinary sequences of life are laced with protection that we may never see, yet is no less real. The psalm extends this protection beyond physical threats to spiritual and emotional realms as well. Life's battles are not confined to visible dangers. Unseen forces, temptations, deceptions, and moments of profound anxiety can inflict harm on the soul in ways that remain hidden from casual observation. In these arenas, the psalm assures that the faithful are not alone, that there exists a spiritual defense, an army of angels, functioning under divine authority, whose mission is to safeguard the integrity, purpose, and well-being of those who abide in God's presence. This notion transforms the understanding of adversity. Threats are not merely external, they are spiritual realities, yet they are met with an equally real, divinely mandated protection that ensures the believer can endure, persevere, and ultimately emerge intact. History and lived experiences abound with echoes of this unseen guardianship. Across cultures, accounts of miraculous preservation abound, not in the form of overtly miraculous events alone, but in subtle, precise interventions that prevent disaster. Consider stories from individuals who narrowly escaped catastrophic accidents, yet were not harmed despite circumstances that would ordinarily have resulted in tragedy. Medical professionals, emergency responders, and eyewitnesses may document the facts. Yet for the one who survives, The memory often carries a sense of divine orchestration, a presence at work in the details, invisible yet undeniable. Psalm 91 frames these experiences within a spiritual reality, reminding believers that these moments are not random, but the actions of divine agents operating under God's command. Moreover, the psalm challenges readers to consider the relationship between divine protection and personal engagement with God. Angels are described not as autonomous guardians responding to arbitrary calls, but as emissaries carrying out the precise will of God. Their activity is contingent upon the faithful abiding in the secret place, living in sustained proximity and trust. Protection is relational, not transactional. It flows from the connection between the believer and God. By dwelling close, by surrendering to the rhythm of divine presence, the faithful enter into a partnership in which their safety is not left to chance, but is actively ensured by spiritual forces fully aligned with God's sovereign will. This deepens the understanding of faith. It is not merely belief in abstract principles, but a living engagement that activates the divine protection described in the psalm. The imagery of angels carrying and guarding the faithful also carries profound psychological and emotional resonance. In moments of fear, isolation, or despair, the awareness that unseen forces are interceding, standing vigilant, and upholding life can provide a unique sense of peace. It reframes vulnerability, not as exposure to random chance, but as a space in which God's providence is intimately operative, whether facing tangible dangers like natural disasters, illness, or violence, or intangible threats like doubt, fear, or emotional turmoil. The psalm presents a vision in which the faithful are enveloped by a protective presence that transcends human perception, yet remains acutely effective. In practical terms, this understanding encourages attentiveness and gratitude. Every instance in which harm is averted, every moment of resilience in the face of adversity, becomes a testimony to the operational reality of divine guardianship. It invites believers to recognize the hand of God in subtle interventions, to cultivate a posture of awareness and trust, and to live with the assurance that safety is not dependent solely on human effort, but is secured by a presence that is both omnipotent and intimately personal. This vision is not escapism. It is empowerment, offering a framework in which faith, trust, and divine oversight converge to sustain life in its full complexity. Ultimately, Psalm 91 teaches that divine protection is comprehensive and deeply relational. Angels, acting under God's authority, are a vivid illustration of this protection, bridging the seen and unseen, the spiritual and the physical, the extraordinary and the everyday. Through this lens, every step of the faithful is accompanied, every potential stumble anticipated, and every life preserved in ways both subtle and profound. It is a reassurance that the invisible forces of God's kingdom are continually at work, guarding, upholding, and intervening, ensuring that those who dwell in His presence are never left unprotected, never truly alone, and eternally secure in the embrace of a divine guardian who moves unseen yet powerfully in every moment of their lives. As the psalm continues, it confronts one of the most profound truths of human experience, that even for those who dwell in divine protection, fear and suffering remain an inescapable part of life. The sacred words do not deny the existence of pain, nor do they offer an illusion that faith grants immunity from hardship. Instead, they reveal a deeper mystery that through trust, adversity is transformed from something to be feared into a sacred space where the faithfulness and power of God are most vividly revealed. This transformation is not sudden or easy. It unfolds quietly, often in the shadow of despair, when human strength seems to falter and all that remains is the fragile, trembling act of holding on to belief. Yet it is in this very fragility that divine power becomes visible, not as a force that removes suffering, but as one that redeems it, turning trials into testimonies and wounds into witnesses of grace. To understand this, imagine a moment of fear so profound it paralyzes the soul. It could be the sudden loss of something precious, the collapse of certainty, or the moment when one's prayers seem to echo unanswered. In such moments, the instinct is to withdraw, to hide, to question whether divine protection has faltered. But Psalm 91 does not promise a life devoid of storms, it promises presence within the storm. The same God who commands angels to guard also allows the winds to rise, not as punishment, but as an invitation to trust deeper, to discover that faith is not the absence of fear, but the courage to stand firm within it. The psalmist understood that divine faithfulness shines brightest not in moments of ease, but in those trembling spaces where everything else fades away, and the only thing left to hold is the invisible hand of God. Throughout history, countless individuals have walked through such valleys, their stories echoing the truth of this sacred passage. There were those who faced illness when medicine offered no cure, yet spoke of peace that surpassed understanding. Others who endured betrayal, loss, or uncertainty, yet emerged not bitter but luminous, carrying within them a quiet confidence that defied logic. Their strength was not born of denial, but of surrender, the deep realization that while they could not control the storm, they were never abandoned within it. These lives, ordinary yet radiant, become living commentaries on Psalm 91, illustrating that the promise of protection does not mean the absence of pain, but the unbreakable assurance that even pain itself can become a vessel of divine power. This paradox lies at the heart of faith, that trust is most authentic when there is every reason to doubt, and love is most profound when it endures without evidence. The psalmist's vision of deliverance is not one of escape, but of transformation. To trust in God amid suffering is to stand in the tension between what is seen and what is promised. To believe that the unseen presence guarding your steps is more enduring than the visible chaos surrounding them. It is a trust that redefines what victory means, not the avoidance of difficulty, but the quiet resilience that persists within it. When the psalm declares that no evil shall befall those who dwell in the secret place, it speaks not of a world without pain, but of a soul that remains untouched by despair, anchored in a peace that no external circumstance can steal. In the midst of life's fiercest battles, this kind of trust becomes a testimony more powerful than any spoken word. It is one thing to proclaim faith when skies are clear. It is another to hold it when everything crumbles, when fear presses close and suffering feels endless. The believer who continues to trust becomes a living symbol of divine endurance. Through such faith, the unseen becomes visible, God's power, revealed not through thunder or fire, but through quiet perseverance, through the human heart that refuses to yield to hopelessness. Each tear, each prayer uttered in darkness, becomes a thread woven into the tapestry of divine faithfulness, evidence that love and light persist even when the night is long. Consider the ancient wisdom woven into this psalm. It acknowledges both shadow and light, both pain and deliverance, holding them together without contradiction. The existence of suffering does not diminish God's sovereignty. Rather, it becomes the very stage upon which that sovereignty is displayed. Like gold refined by fire, faith deepens through trial, shedding its superficial layers until what remains is pure, unshakable trust. In that refinement, believers discover something that cannot be learned through comfort: the ability to see God not only as protector in times of peace, but as companion in times of sorrow. This companionship transforms the landscape of suffering, turning desolation into dialogue, isolation into intimacy, and fear into revelation. When one walks through hardship with this awareness, life itself becomes a sanctuary. The noise of anxiety begins to fade beneath the steady rhythm of divine presence, and the heart learns to recognize that even in the darkest hour, it is being held. The psalm's promise takes on new meaning. Deliverance is not always about being removed from danger, but being sustained through it. The faithful emerge changed, not untouched. but transformed, bearing within them a quiet testimony that speaks louder than words, that trust in God does not erase pain, but it redeems it, giving it purpose, shaping it into something eternal. And so, the psalm leads its reader into a profound recognition that the protective power of God does not exist apart from human experience but within it, woven through every struggle and triumph alike. It reveals a relationship so deep that even fear and suffering become instruments through which divine faithfulness is made visible. The believer who stands amid adversity and still declares, "He is my refuge and my fortress," embodies the heart of Psalm 91, living proof that faith is not a fragile comfort but an unshakable foundation. In the end, it is not the absence of trials that defines divine protection, but the transformation of the heart within them, a heart that has seen both darkness and dawn, and now beats with the quiet confidence that nothing, not even suffering itself, can separate it from the steadfast love and enduring power of the one who promised to be near. As the narrative of Psalm 91 unfolds, it moves from the realm of protection and endurance into the domain of triumph and authority, revealing a dimension of faith that empowers the believer to confront forces that threaten the soul. The psalm does not shy away from naming the dangers that surround us. It uses vivid metaphors: lions, serpents, and the schemes of the wicked to illustrate the multifaceted challenges of life, from overt assaults to subtle deceptions, from fierce opposition to quiet, creeping evil. These images are not mere poetic flourish, but carefully chosen symbols that resonate across time and culture, inviting reflection on the spiritual and moral battles that define human existence. The psalmist's intent is clear. Through dwelling in God's presence and cultivating steadfast faith, one is granted not only protection but also authority to rise above adversity, to tread over the forces that would seek to destroy, deceive, or dishearten. Consider the lion, a creature emblematic of raw power and visible threat, stalking across the plains with strength and ferocity. It represents those trials in life that cannot be ignored. Sudden losses, confrontations, betrayals, or calamities that strike with unmistakable force. To face such a lion unarmed in the human sense is perilous. Yet Psalm 91 declares that proximity to divine presence transforms vulnerability into dominion. The believer who dwells in the secret place does not confront these lions alone. The power to withstand, the courage to endure, and the wisdom to navigate are all infused by the nearness of God. What once inspired fear now evokes reverence and measured courage. For the psalm assures that the hand that shields also equips, that divine authority accompanies every step taken through danger. The serpent, by contrast, is an insidious adversary, emblematic of deception, temptation, and the subtle corrosions that erode trust and clarity over time. It slithers unnoticed, striking when vigilance wanes, and represents the moral and spiritual threats that infiltrate daily life with a whisper rather than a roar. The psalm teaches that authority over the serpent comes not through human cunning or superficial vigilance, but through intimate communion with God, through abiding in a presence that discerns truth from falsehood. This authority is not aggressive dominance, but a confident sovereignty rooted in alignment with divine will, a capacity to resist temptation, to discern deception, and to act with integrity even when the stakes are high. To dwell in God's shadow is to be equipped to navigate these hidden challenges with clarity and courage, transforming subtle threats into opportunities for growth and steadfastness. The wicked, meanwhile, embody the broader spectrum of adversity, those forces, both human and spiritual, that act with malice or indifference, seeking to harm or mislead. They are the societal pressures, the injustices, the unexpected betrayals that test resilience and faith. Psalm 91 does not promise that these forces will vanish, nor does it suggest that the faithful are exempt from encounter. Rather, It affirms that through trust and obedience, the believer is granted the authority to overcome them, to emerge resilient even when surrounded by chaos. Triumph, in this sense, is not measured by the absence of opposition, but by the capacity to remain steadfast, upright, and compassionate, asserting one's values and principles in alignment with divine guidance. What binds these metaphors together is the underlying principle of spiritual authority conferred through relationship and trust. The psalm repeatedly emphasizes dwelling in God's presence, not occasional acknowledgement, not fleeting attention, but a sustained, intimate communion that transforms fear into confidence and vulnerability into strength. Those who abide in this presence are not passive recipients of protection. They are active participants in the divine plan, endowed with the capacity to navigate life's perils with a resilience that is both moral and spiritual. The authority described is not coercive or domineering, but emerges from alignment with truth and the internalization of divine wisdom, manifesting in courage, discernment, and the ability to act decisively when confronted with both overt and hidden challenges. Real-life examples echo these truths in ways that bring the psalm to life across centuries. Consider historical figures who faced persecution and deceit yet persisted in principles of justice and mercy, who confronted violent opposition without succumbing to hatred, and whose courage inspired generations. Their victories were not always external or visible, but within the framework of Psalm 91, their endurance and moral triumph illustrate the empowerment of faith, demonstrating that authority over the lions, serpents, and wicked is exercised in the sphere of character, conviction, and conscience. Likewise, ordinary individuals navigating everyday trials, maintaining integrity in the face of ethical dilemmas, responding with compassion amidst hostility, or resisting corrosive temptations manifest the psalm's promises, showing that triumph is not reserved for the extraordinary but accessible to those who dwell steadfastly in divine presence. The psalm also underscores the symbiotic relationship between protection and authority. Protection is not passive shielding, but an enabler of confident action. It allows the believer to step into life's challenges with composure, moral clarity, and spiritual insight. In the narrative of Psalm 91, the one who treads under the protection of God does so not timidly but with discernment and courage, recognizing that threats are present yet powerless to undo the covenantal relationship that sustains them. Triumph, then, is inseparable from trust. It is both a product of divine presence and a reflection of human choice to abide faithfully, to act with courage and integrity despite uncertainty, and to live visibly in a way that honors both the divine promise and the responsibilities it entails. In this way, the psalm bridges the gap between vulnerability and empowerment, revealing that the journey of faith encompasses both shelter and sovereignty. Those who dwell in God's secret place learn that resilience is cultivated not through isolation or avoidance, but through engagement with the world from a place of strength. Guided by discernment and supported by divine authority, the lions and serpents, the wicked and the hidden dangers, become not insurmountable threats, but instruments through which faith matures and character solidifies, demonstrating that divine protection and human responsibility are intertwined. In walking this path, the believer discovers a profound truth, that to dwell in God's presence is to inhabit a realm where fear is confronted, evil is resisted, and the soul is strengthened, empowered, and ultimately triumphant, revealing the enduring promise that faith grants both refuge and authority, courage and resilience, in the midst of darkness and uncertainty. As we draw near to the conclusion of this journey through Psalm 91, we are met with a crescendo of divine assurance, a series of promises that crown the chapter and illuminate the path for those who dwell in the presence of God. These are not abstract notions, but vivid, life-transforming guarantees, 8 in total, each carrying profound weight and practical significance for the believer navigating a world filled with uncertainty and peril. The psalm moves from the intimate depiction of God as a refuge and fortress to the declaration of his enduring covenant. A covenant that assures deliverance from danger, protection against threats, and guidance through trials both visible and unseen. It is in this culmination that the full depth of God's care and faithfulness is revealed, offering a framework for living courageously, wisely, and faithfully. The first promise, deliverance, reassures us that no matter the nature of the danger, whether a sudden calamity, a hidden trap, or the schemes of malevolent forces, God's power intervenes to rescue those who trust in him. This is not a mere poetic metaphor, but a declaration rooted in the lived experiences of countless generations who have found safety in the shadow of the Almighty. In deliverance, we see the convergence of divine timing, wisdom, and strength, orchestrating circumstances beyond human comprehension to protect and preserve life. This promise speaks directly to the human heart, which naturally fears the unknown and recoils from danger, offering a source of courage that transcends natural ability and circumstance. Protection, the second promise, is a constant, enveloping presence. It is both immediate and comprehensive, shielding the believer from harm in ways that may be subtle or overt. This protection extends beyond the physical, encompassing emotional and spiritual dimensions, guarding the mind from despair, the heart from bitterness, and the spirit from corruption. Within the psalm, this protection is portrayed not as a temporary shield but as a steadfast, abiding reality for those who remain close to God. It is an invisible armor, woven of divine wisdom and power, ensuring that even in the midst of trials, the faithful remain unscathed at the core of their being. The promise of answered prayer emphasizes the intimate relationship between God and his followers. Those who call upon him in sincerity, who approach his throne with trust and humility, are assured that their voices are heard and their needs are considered. This is not a guarantee of instant gratification or avoidance of hardship, but a reassurance that divine wisdom governs the response, that prayers are met with the perfect blend of timing, provision, and guidance. Answered prayer nurtures hope, cultivates patience, and strengthens faith, teaching that God's responses are guided by a vision far greater than human understanding. The presence of God in trouble is another cornerstone of these promises. Life is inevitably marked by challenges, moments of confusion, fear, or pain. Yet the psalm assures that in every trial, the believer is not abandoned. God's presence is a tangible reality in the midst of storms, a source of comfort that transforms fear into trust and despair into courage. This promise reinforces the idea that closeness to God is not merely a spiritual ideal but a lived experience, one that sustains and empowers through the darkest seasons. Honor, the fifth promise, speaks to the recognition and respect that flow from a life aligned with divine principles. While human accolades may be fleeting, the honor referenced here is enduring, a reflection of integrity, faithfulness, and the visible impact of a life lived in accordance with God's guidance. It serves as both encouragement and motivation, reminding believers that their commitment carries meaning, that ethical and faithful living resonates in ways beyond immediate perception. Long life, as promised in the psalm, is framed not simply in terms of chronological years but as a fullness of life imbued with purpose, health, and spiritual vitality. It reflects the idea that alignment with God's will fosters a life of resilience, clarity, and fulfillment, where each day is infused with meaning and each challenge offers an opportunity for growth. This promise conveys a vision of life as abundant, rich with experiences that nurture the soul and cultivate character, rather than mere survival. Salvation, the final promise, is the culmination of all that precedes it. It is the assurance that those who love and trust God are ultimately preserved and restored, not only in this temporal life but eternally. Salvation embodies the ultimate triumph over fear, evil, and mortality, anchoring the believer in hope and reinforcing the transformative power of faith. It is both a present reality and a future hope, offering a profound sense of security and purpose that shapes every choice and action. Together, these 8 promises form a powerful tapestry of divine care, resilience, and empowerment. They are a testament to the depth of God's commitment to those who abide in Him, a reminder that faith is not passive but active, shaping the way we live, respond, and endure. They encourage us to dwell courageously, to navigate life's complexities with discernment, and to face adversity with confidence rooted in divine fidelity. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Psalm 91, a chapter that continues to inspire, challenge, and uplift believers across generations. If this message has touched your heart, offered clarity, or strengthened your faith, I warmly invite you to like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more insights that illuminate Scripture and enrich your spiritual journey. Together, let us continue to uncover the profound wisdom, protection, and promises of God, learning to dwell confidently in His presence and live fully in the assurance of His enduring love.